Hi, my name is Holly Torres, and I'm with the Loxahatchee Battlefield Preservationists, a nonprofit organization who strives to protect, preserve, and interpret the sacred history we have here on the Loxahatchee River in Jupiter, Florida, located inside Riverbend, Loxahatchee River Battlefield Park. We're excited to have you all with us today to learn about the history of our wonderful, beautiful sacred land. What we do know is that for 14,000 years, people have lived in Florida. 14,000 years. European contact happened approximately 500 to 600 years ago. So let's see, how many grandmothers is that? If you can calculate how many grandmothers back that would go and email it to me, you will get a prize when you come out for your private tour. So today we hope to bring you a really unique opportunity and view of some incredible artifacts going way back those thousands of years, as well as bringing you into the more recent Second Seminole War time period around the 1838 year, where two significant battles occurred right here in this park.
Hi, I'm Steve Carr, and welcome to the Loxahatchee Battlefield Park. We're in the Riverbend area compound of northern Jupiter, and we're talking today about the story of this incredible place. We talked a little bit earlier about the Native American populations that came here, but actually there was another population here long before the Native American population showed up 5,000 years ago. And those were what we call megafauna. These were the giant animals that stomped around Florida. Now, people could guess what they look like if you didn't have a source to reference them, you might just kind of get it in your idea. What we've done is we've gathered a group of fossils from around Florida to try to give you an idea of what these animals might have looked like and interpret their size. I want to show you some things here that I think are really cool. They all come from this region, although not all of them come from the park. I'm going to start over here to my left, and I'm going to pick up this thing, which for most people, they would look at that and they probably would say, well, it kind of looks like a piece of wood, but it doesn't. It's not a piece of wood. It's extremely heavy. This is a fossilized tusk, and that is the tusk of a mammoth. And yes, we did have mammoths in Florida. As a matter of fact, thousands and thousands of years ago, nomadic hunters would come to Florida to hunt the mammoths. They were easier to hunt in Florida because at that time, Florida was more of a grassland, kind of like if you could picture a West Texas prairie, that's what Florida looked like. Now, why was Florida so dry and arid and looked like a prairie? It's because most of the water that we see today was held up in the Great Glaciers. As the Great Glaciers began to melt, we got more water, and Florida became the more subtropical climate. Prior to that, though, Florida was this vast grassland, and all the big animals came to Florida to graze off of the grass. What I'm holding is a tusk from a woolly mammoth. Now, this mammoth tusk isn't one of the biggest I've seen, but it's big enough for us to understand that it probably was somewhere in the area of 8 to 12 feet long. That's a long reach. Now, if the mammoth itself had a height of about 15 feet, then that means this mammoth could reach almost 20 to 25 feet in the air using his tusk. This is a fossilized piece, and you can see the seashells that attach themselves. What does that tell you? It tells you at one point, as the Great Glaciers were melting, sea levels rose and eventually covered this piece of mammoth tusk. It was uncovered from a shell pit not far from here about 15 years ago, and that kind of gives you an idea of one of the big animals we had here in Florida. This is another one. This is probably the most dynamic predator that Florida ever had, and that is the saber-toothed tiger. We have a skull here which shows the bite radius, which is quite impressive, really. You wouldn't want to get your arm or leg caught by one of these animals because they were strong enough to take it completely off. But these were the apex predators of their time. This one dates to probably about 6,000 to 8,000 years ago. This is a really cool piece, and it's probably one of the rarer fossils that we find in Florida or anywhere in North America. I'm going to show you another mammoth artifact here. This is a mammoth tooth, if you can believe that. And they were incredibly well designed. And if you remember what I was saying about mammoths earlier, they were vegetarians. So they were plant eaters. And you can see how these teeth, as they would come down, they would shovel tons and tons of plant material back into the mammoth's mouth, and then he would kind of chew it up, and then it would get digested. But you can see how the ends of those teeth are worn off. So this is a tooth of a fairly old mammoth that over the years just ground down vegetation and would push it inside. That's kind of a cool artifact. This is a mammoth tooth, and this is typically the way we find them in Florida. It looks like it's got cement around it, but it actually doesn't. That is the basic material that has adhered to this tooth. If you look at it from this side, it actually looks like a rock. You wouldn't know there was a tooth in there, but the calcium components and other adhesives have kind of attached over thousands and thousands of years, and the concretions have built up over the tooth. And this is what a mammoth tooth looks like before it gets cleaned, and this of course is what it looks like after it's been cleaned. So you can see the difference between the two of them. This is the way we typically find them, and this is the way they look after we have cleaned them. Now I want to show you one more artifact here. Now this is also from an early animal that inhabited our area. This is what we call, this is a rib bone from what we call a dungong. Now a dungong, a funny name for the animal, but a dungong was actually a manatee, and it was a very large manatee. It was like a super manatee, probably 3 to 5 times larger than the typical manatees that we find today. What's so impressive about this manatee rib is that it tells us so much more than just about the animal. It tells us about the people that hunted the animal, because here in the center we can see butcher marks from when this animal was captured and killed, and then this major rib section was actually thrown into a fire and heated up. Now how do I know that? If we turn it over, we can see the scorching marks up on the top of this rib from when it was in the fire. That tells us this was superheated, the meat was cooked, and then you can see primitive knife blades being drawn across the bone in order to flesh out the food source. So this, not only is it an artifact or a fossilized artifact from a dungong, but it also shows this interaction with the native populations that were here as much as 5,000 years ago. So with that, we're going to shift over and move ourselves from that 10,000 years ago to 5,000 years ago, and now we're going to go 5,000 years forward. I've brought a few things from Native Americans from this area, and we've got them displayed in the box, and there's different types of things, but we call these, in this top row, we call them lithic points. And a lithic point is basically a stone tool or flint or chert. There's 3 types of hardened material that are worked here. And they're worked into different types of devices that could be used for many different purposes. But for the most part, what we see are things like this one, which is developed into a spear point. This is probably from North Florida. This is a material that's not found in our area. As a matter of fact, there's almost very little hardened material that's found in our area, so almost all of it has to be imported. This one is probably more typical of a spear point, as are these larger ones. They were used for hunting. They were not, a lot of people say, well, those are arrowheads. Well, they're not typically arrowheads. If you put this on the end of an arrow and fired it, it wouldn't go very far because it's extremely heavy. Arrowheads are more typical of this size. This is a paleo arrowhead, and when I say paleo, that's a time period, roughly 5,000 years ago. This has a Clovis-style rear, where the way it's made, and then it's sharpened into a rounded point rather than a straight sharpened point. We have some other points here which are more prototypical of arrowheads. Now those were for defensive purposes. That was probably to defend your area from other Native Americans that might have a mind to take over where you're at. We have you can see different types of materials. They weren't picky about what they used as long as it was hard enough to turn into either a weapon. Some of these can be sharpened and serrated and made into knives. Now this one could be fastened in as a knife blade. So it would have a short shank coming off here, wrapped with sinew or leather wrapping, and then so this could be used as a cutting tool or as a stabbing tool, depending on what they needed. So the Native Americans were very clever, and they worked very hard at developing these tools. I want to also draw your attention to pieces of these ceramic pieces. Now this is an interesting piece of ceramic pottery. Native Americans about 2,000 to 2,500 years ago began learning how to create pottery, ceramics, and they would do this by finding clay resources in rivers and lakes, molding that clay into a vessel like a pot, clay pot, or a there could be many different types of shapes that were utilitarian in fashion: bowls, cups, and as I said, pots. This one was clearly designed into a pot. It was done by molding pieces of clay, pushing pieces of clay together, turning the pot over a heated source and allowing the heat to dry it out, which would create ceramic pottery. They were finished off inside. You can see the hand finish work inside this piece of pottery. That's what they used in their everyday life. In Florida, the adhesion level wasn't very good in the clay that we find in Florida, so pottery in Florida didn't last so very long. Maybe 3 to 5 days could be the full life of a piece of a pot or a bowl or a cup. So they just have to make them over again. That's why we find so much of this. But this one has some interesting decorations on it, and it is a strong pot, so I would imagine this was a very large thing, probably used for cooking.
My name is Glenn Bakels. I'm with the Loxahatchee Battlefield Preservationists here in Jupiter, Florida. We're at Riverbend Park and Loxahatchee Battlefield Park today. The entire facility is a little over 700 acres, and the battlefield park itself is about 64 acres. So where I am right now is I'm actually standing in the Seminole village, as you would have seen it in 1838. And the Seminole village was quite extensive. We got to kind of remember that there was 700 or more or less in that approximate area of Seminoles, black Seminoles, and black freedmen. The village, you can see maybe the traffic down there at Indian Town Road would have extended maybe an eighth to a quarter mile down that side. Also, I'll take you to another place. We have Mark II Seminole camps here at the battlefield that the soldiers attacked in 1838. During the battle, what I'm about to show you over the side of the bridge here, this body of water in the 1830s was more like a creek. This was not the river as you would think of the main body of the river. This would be more like a stream, a creek. It probably would have been a drainage from some of the higher hammocks and things in the area into the river. All right, now I'll show you the second Seminole village. Now, you know, it's our guess as good as anybody's. Could this have been the Black Seminole village? Could it have been where the freedmen were, where they separated? We just don't know. We don't have any documentation that discusses that. But there are some theories, and they are theories. But this is the second village that we're approaching right now. And we are now on the west side of that creek that most people think is the Loxahatchee River now. All right, if you scan in this direction, you will see the second Seminole village. This whole area would have been camps and social gathering places and meeting places, what have you, all the things that you would have in a traditional Seminole village. One thing I want to point out about this park is this park is thought to have one of the heaviest concentrations of recorded Native American and archaeological sites east of the Mississippi. This piling here is not the military bridge. The military bridge would be a little bit further to the north. But this is an agricultural bridge that was used by the Reese family in the old Grove days in the late 1800s and early 1900s. This bridge was taken out a few years back because of its safety concerns. Okay, we'll continue down here to the corner. Okay, here we are. We're in the corner. Now, we really can't see down here, but right on the other side of this foliage here is the original course of the Loxahatchee River. So it's important to note that the river took a slight westerly turn in 1838. When it comes to archaeology and exploration, is this land that you see here is pretty much filled. It can be anywhere from 3 maybe to 5, maybe even 8 feet deep in some places. So the actual battlefield is below the surface of what you're seeing here now. So any battlefield artifacts, any remnants of the village would be far underneath the earth here. And for those of you who come here for our reenactments, to our right here in the middle of the Indian village, is our or to our left, I should say, is our reenactment area. So those of you that come to our reenactments to reenact or observe are used to this particular area here. All right, straight ahead, you see part of the original river, the Loxahatchee River. Now, once again, for agricultural reasons, this was channeled. So you're not seeing an exact copy of what you would have been seeing at that time on the Loxahatchee. But this ditch, this indentation in the ground, is where the river comes off this channel. And it begins to head west, slightly southwest, before it turns south again. Now, where we are right now is we're at a place called the Tree of Tears. You know, most battlefields, they have monuments and they have cannons and they have readouts and they have forts and things like that. Well, we don't have any of that. We have a picture. We have a beautiful landscape. But one of the things that we do have here is the Tree of Tears. The Tree of Tears is a 300-plus-year-old water oak tree. Sits upon a water pedestal, an oak pedestal. Not only is the fence there to protect the mound from deterioration, because people used to love to go up there and get their picture taken and ghost hunt and things like that, that they put the fence around it. But the big deal is the safety. This being an old tree, it's not uncommon for big branches just to fall off and come crashing to the ground. I know that firsthand very well. So the fence is also there for safety as well. I named this the Tree of Tears. Graham Hulls was working on tracking the Trail of Tears through the park many years ago, which he successfully did. and we named the Tree of Tears after its proximity to the Trail of Tears. It has nothing to do with fallen soldiers or wounded soldiers or anything like that. That myth got started years later, and we're looking to correct that as we speak. We talk about the opening battle, and we talked about the fact that the Seminoles planned this battle. Well, you know, after the Powell battle on the 15th, they knew for certain that the soldiers would be back, and I believe that they were quite prepared for it. That being in the way they defended this place. As it turns out, on January 24th, 1838, somewhere between 11 and 12 o'clock in the morning, shots were fired. And these first shots were shots from the Seminoles, where they had engaged the advanced guard of Captain Fulton, his advanced guard of 2nd Dragoons and Tennessee Volunteers. Now, a young private, and I'll just quote the private in what he says about this, a young Dragoon private says, "As we approached a high hammock, we were fired upon by Seminoles, by the Indians. As we approached the high hammock, we were fired on by the Indians. We dismounted and we charged. We were driven back, but we charged again. Quickly, we realized that we were being surrounded. We flew to our horses and warned the army 4 miles to our rear." But here we are again. This is probably the best picture of the original riverbed. And we call this the first phase of the battle. We're not going to take you all the way out to where the Dragoons were engaged. We don't know exactly where that was, but it was somewhere in this area, or maybe a quarter mile to our west, that the Dragoons were engaged in this high hammock. And another important thing to talk about the soldiers is that a total of 1,635 were here against the Seminoles. And one of the things that we thought in the early days is this was probably a hastily erected village, but we don't think that anymore. We feel certain, given the history, the archaeological history of the ancient Indians and habitation here for thousands and thousands of years, we believe that this was an established area, and that possibly the Seminoles, some of the Seminoles that fought at Okeechobee, may have come from the Loxahatchee River. They may have actually been summoned. So they knew this place was here, and why do we say that? Well, on January 15th, when Lieutenant Powell with the Navy shows up, he immediately captures a black Seminole woman tending to a herd of cattle and horses. It was said to be about 500 cattle and horses. Well, we don't really have time to go into Okeechobee, but that was a bloody affair. This is the area that you would have seen a lot of Dragoon activity. Remember, there's 600 of these guys. We don't know how many are actually mounted at this point. Dragoons are foot soldiers as well. Now, these artillerymen, most of them were carrying muskets. There were 2 6-pound howitzers that we know of, and a Congreve rocket battery as well. So when researchers, archaeologists were searching for evidence of the battle, along the rivers where they first started turning up the grave shot for the artillery. And right here in this area, during the excavation, this would have been a wide open, clear beach. There was no trees here, nothing here. And they were turning up grave shot. So this is called the Eustis Trail. This is the trail that the soldiers came in on. And this is the trail that the baggage train came in on, the artillery and things like that. But more important, over 700 Seminoles were forced down this trail, forced emigrated to the Western Territories. Many slaves, many freed slaves, freedmen and black Seminoles were seized as slaves and taken back to the plantations. So this is a very tragic path. It's a military path, but by the same token, it was a game path long before it was for humans, an ancient Indian path. It's a established road, basically. But this is the Trail of Tears, and that's what this really is amazing about this particular site. This particular area was getting hammered. It was absolutely getting hammered. This is where the most casualties occurred. The casualty count in this particular area was 9 killed immediately, 2 would die later. So this is the Tennessee Volunteer area. The Tennessee Volunteers were commanded by Major William Lauderdale of Tennessee. He sent his men here, or Andrew Jackson sent his men here to put down the Seminole uprising once and for all, but that didn't quite work out for them the way they planned. But we'll move over here to Indian Crossing. Once again, another thing I want to talk about is this is where we found evidence of artillery too. We found K shot. The guys found grape shot, lots of grape shot, and they found lots of flats. In other words, the bullets that they were finding here were flattened out. They were fired. As you move further south down the river, the bullets that we find are drops. They're completely, perfectly round. They're in good shape. They've never been fired. So we have drops to the south. We have flats to the north. Over here at Indian Crossing, at the ford, the Tennessee Volunteers, as I stated, are pinned down. General Jessup hears of this news, and furious, he rides up on his horse with his staff and his escort, and he dismounts. And he confronts the Tennessee officer. And he says, "Men, or sir, bring your men up, or I will blow your brains out." The Tennessee officer refuses to bring his men up because of the casualties they've already suffered. General Jessup, realizing that, well, he really honestly can't shoot this man, decides he's going to charge the river. And this is the approximate place where General Jessup did this. Now, sometimes we can walk across here, but right across, this is Indian Crossing. But sometimes we can wade across here. Now, last time I waded across here, I wasn't paying attention to what I was doing. And I found myself in a cubby full of little gators and a mad mama. Mama wasn't all that happy with me, so I was able to back out of there pretty quick. The other final chapter of this particular battle, besides what occurred at Fort Jupiter, which is really the big story, the war would go on for 4 more years. 700 Seminoles would head west. The survivors would become the Seminole tribe of Florida, and the Seminole Nation, which is out west in the Oklahoma territories, or in the state of Oklahoma now, would be the other group of Seminoles. So that is the difference between the two groups of people, and the survivors and the people that were captured and they were marched west. The Tennessee Volunteers, on the other hand, there was a big dust-up over the incident here at the river with General Jessup. The Tennessee Volunteers were forced to leave Fort Jupiter for a number of reasons, but in a nutshell, the violence, the arguments, the shenanigans between the regulars and the volunteers became so bad that they actually made them go establish their own camp about a mile west of Fort Jupiter. So that's the kind of relationship that was between the Tennessee Volunteers and the regular soldiers. So with that, I thank you very much for listening to me. Hopefully I didn't run on too long. Hope you enjoyed the tour. This is the new tour route, and hope to see you back out here at the battlefield real soon.
Hello and welcome to the Loxahatchee Battlefield. I'm Stephen Carr, and this is
Rhoda Griffin.
Rhoda and I are here today to talk about some of the great things that happened in our historical past right here on the Loxahatchee Battlefield. Rhoda knows a little bit about the Loxahatchee Battlefield, but we're going to just kind of see if she doesn't know a little bit more than she thinks she does, because we have all kinds of artifacts laid out on the table. Plus, we have some very interesting information, some research that we've done on the people that were here during the Second Seminole War. So you want to take a look at some of this stuff? How does that sound to you? Okay, let's have a seat, and we're going to just kind of look at some of this stuff and then talk about it. first thing I'd like to do, Rada, is I would like to talk to you about some of the people that were here. What do you know about the people that were here during the Seminole War?
I know that they were stolen by the soldiers, and they lived in a very large village.
They lived in a large village, right. Well, what kind of people came here to the Loxahatchee?
The Seminole.
That's right. The Seminoles, the Seminole Indians. They came here to the Loxahatchee probably somewhere around 1830, maybe a little bit before, and they built a big village here. One of the groups of people that I noticed when we were doing research, we know that during the battle here, there were probably about 700 to 800 Seminoles that were in this big village. Now, 2 battles were fought here in 1838, one on January 15th, and then another one just a short time later on January 24th. The battle on January 24th was a defeat for the Seminoles. They were totally defeated. 1,500 soldiers came here, and they came here with cannons, they came here with rockets, they came here with muskets, which are guns that they fire from the shoulder, pistols and swords, and they came here to try to kill or capture the Seminoles. It doesn't sound very good, does it? Especially if you're a Seminole. So they came here, and that second battle they fought, it didn't last very long, and it was a horrible defeat for the Seminoles. Now, a few days after the battle, the Seminoles began surrendering to the soldiers at a place called Fort Jupiter. This is a fort that the soldiers built right after the battle. Now, interestingly, we have a copy of the information the soldiers took on the Seminoles that were surrendering. And what I found interesting, and why I want to talk to you, is that among the people that were captured here were a lot of kids. Did you know that? You knew there were kids. There were a lot of children.
160?
160. Rada says there are 160, and we know that because we put an orange mark through all of them, and you had a chance to count them, didn't you? There were 160 kids. Now, those are the Seminole kids. Here, amongst the Seminoles, we know that there were at least 200 African Americans that were with the Seminoles during that battle. And of those 200, I have a page here that shows how many children, and this may not be all of them, but this is at least some of them. So we have at least 16 black children that were here, and at least 160 Seminole children. Can I ask you a favor? How about helping me read the names of some of the kids that were here and their ages, okay? And maybe we'll just say their first name, okay? Instead of trying to pronounce their entire Seminole name, let's just read their first name. This one was Miko. Can you say Miko?
Miko.
How old was Miko?
3.
Miko was 3. This one is Rena. Rena, how old was she?
7.
7. This one is Stipney. Stipney, how old was Stipney?
5.
5. So those are all pretty young kids, and kids that age just shouldn't be around a battle. Matter of fact, it's just kind of scary to think that a child would have to go through that, wouldn't you think? So this was a pretty tough deal for the Seminole children. None of the children amongst the African Americans, what names do they have for them? They just call them
E.
They call them child. See that? They didn't even write the names, except there's one here. His name was Charlie Jumper Jr. That's the only one who they bothered to take his name. The rest of them are just child. What I have in front of you today is a lot of old rusty stuff. It's just rusty old stuff, right? But the interesting thing about all this old rusty stuff is it all helps to tell the story. because all of this was excavated from that same fort that they took all those prisoners to, that they took the Seminoles to, that they took the African Americans to. All of this stuff was recovered from that fort during an archaeological excavation. Can you say archaeological?
Archaeological.
Okay.
Archaeological.
I just wanted to see if you could say that, because it is kind of a tongue twister, isn't it? Do you know what archaeology is?
Yes.
What is it? Tell me.
It's where you save the past.
It is. It's really saving the past, but even more importantly, what it is, it's learning about the past. And an archaeologist's job is to learn everything he or she can learn about the past. Okay, so this is a big fort, and it has a big opening where they have to let the horses and the wagons through, and then they have to close that. What's that called? It opens and then it closes. It's starts with a G. Get. You open the gate. There you go. And you close the gate, right? And because there are Indians that are out there, or there are people that are out there that might want to harm the soldiers, they have to have a way to close the gate, right? Okay, so they've got these big giant gates. They're made of big wooden poles. So, with that said, what do you think this was?
A latch?
That's amazing! Wow! She get right out. She knew what it was. That is the gate latch to Old Fort Jupiter. What do you think that is?
A horseshoe?
A horseshoe! Did you know you were going to get these questions? No? That's pretty good, because most kids your age wouldn't know what a horseshoe is. Okay? And that's a shoe that went on a
horse.
Yeah, that's easy said. How about this? Now, this is rusty and kind of falling apart, but what do you think that was?
A brick.
Looks like a brick. I'm going to give you a clue. It's something you chop with.
Oh, an axe.
An axe. There you go. Very good. They also had some of these, but not many. That looks like a big what?
Nail.
A big nail, isn't it?
Yes.
And that was also so they could nail the posts together that would hold the fort together. Isn't this kind of cool? Because somebody used that in 1838 to put the fort together. You want to hold that? Now this is kind of interesting, and I know there's no way in the world you're going to get this, but I'm going to ask you anyway. But this is kind of cool. This, I'm going to give you a little hint. It went over an animal, over the animal's neck, and it had leather on it. What do you think that was? If you have a shirt that has a thing around here, what's that thing called?
A collar.
A collar. Okay, so we're getting there. We're getting warm. This is part of a collar, but what did the collar go on? Does this help you any?
A horseshoe.
This is a horseshoe, so if this went on a horse, then this collar also went on a
horse.
This is a horse collar. Now this would have had leather over it, but you can see this is really cool. This went over the shoulders of the horse, and you can see where the rope went through there. The reins could come through here so they could control it. So when they're making the horse go, they can pull on the reins, but that was a horse collar. That comes from Fort Jupiter, and that's from the horses that pulled the wagons up there. Isn't that cool?
Yes.
So a horse from almost 200 years ago used to wear that. You want to hold it? But we talked about the African Americans that came, and we saw the list of them that got captured and brought into Fort Jupiter. And we talked a little bit about slavery. But one of the things that we didn't talk about when we talked about slavery was that slaves, in order to keep them from running away, they had to be controlled. And this is one of the sadder parts of our history. I want you to look at this and try to tell me what you think this might have been used for.
A human leash.
That's right. We call these shackles. These actually were slave shackles. Okay, these were used, believe it or not, this would go around the ankle and a key went in there. Now, most of the lock is gone, but this could be released with the key, and this would be a shackle that would go over somebody's leg. Now, I told you earlier in the story that when the soldiers came here, they brought something that would boom, 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 and it would shoot metal fragments up into where the Indians were. Those were the guys who shot the cannons?
Cannons.
Good, okay. Now, what do you see when you look at this?
I see...
Do you see crossed cannons?
Yes, and I see those
Little squiggly marks? Yeah. What? This is kind of cool. What do you think that was?
I don't know.
I'll tell you what I think it is. You see how it's got little hooks on it? I think this was a locket. Now, this is kind of fun. Do you see this?
Yes.
Now that also is one of these. See that round? That is a musket ball or bullet. So what they did is they flattened these musket balls. They took musket balls that they're supposed to use to shoot at Indians, and they flattened them out. Now, why do you think they might have flattened them out?
Because they were bored.
They were bored, you're right. And when they flatten them out like that, see these that they have like an X in them? You see the X in that? Another one, same thing, flatten out. Well, X's would be the same as black, and probably ones without an X would be red, and so they would play the game called
Tic-tac-toe.
Well, it might be tic-tac-toe, but it also
Checkers.
could... Yes! Very good! You got it. These things, they were made in... They'd make a checkerboard, okay? So they could jump. These are all buckles that went in with the harness and the leather. These are soldiers' buckles. When they fall off, the leather wears out. They just throw them away. They didn't really care. This is kind of interesting. I love this piece. Look at that. Do you see that? These are called fish scales. You see how intricate the work is on there? This was something that was very valuable and lost. I'm not sure what it is. I really don't know. Do you have any guess to what that might have been?
A mermaid tail piece.
Looks like a mermaid's tail, doesn't it? It does. But they put something in. I'm just going to guess that maybe it was from a knife. Somebody carried a knife, and you could just imagine the blade going in there, you know, and then it maybe came down. So it could have been part of a knife or even a sword, a small sword. What is that?
A button.
A button? No, it's not a button. What do you see when you look at that?
An 8.
You see a number 8. I see a number 8 too. What do you think that might have been for? Why would they need to know a number? Why would a soldier need a number?
To tell what number they are?
Right. It kind of helps to identify what group they're with. So they could be with the 8th U.S. Artillery. Now this is another interesting thing. And I don't know what it is. But it has something on there. Can you read that for us?
At.
It says at or AT. Now the AT, that could be initials for somebody. It could be something, we just don't really know what it is. But look at, there's a number on the back. It is a
3.
Is it a 3? It is a 3. Yeah, first I thought it was a 5. Do you have any questions about anything you saw here? All right, Miss Rada, well, I want to thank you for taking the time to come up here and talk to me about the Battle of Loxahatchee and the people that fought it. Would you like to come back and do this again sometime? because I really like working with you. I think you did a really good job, and I'm really happy to sit and talk with people like you about this, because in the future you'll be telling everybody else. You'll be doing what I do, right? Because you're going to be a historian, maybe even an archaeologist. But right now you're Rhoda Griffin, and I'm Steve Carr, and thanks for visiting us on the Loxahatchee Battlefield. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for joining us again today. I am Holly Torres, the president of the Loxahatchee Battlefield Preservationists, and I hope that you will take a peek at our website, loxahatcheebattlefield.com. Don't forget to find my email there at 1838battleofthelox@gmail.com and send me how many grandmothers I would have to go back to hit 14,000 years. And I'd like to invite you and your family on a private tour of the battlefield, free of charge. And those of you that send me the number of grandmothers it would take to go back 14,000 years will get a special outdoor prize.
My name is Chessie Ricca. I am the historical curator for the Loxahatchee Battlefield Preservationists. Just like Holly said, stay tuned for more. Follow us on our Instagram page or Facebook page, and you can find out a lot more on our website. We have plenty of educational opportunities as well as volunteer opportunities. And if you're looking for any community service hours, we are the right place for you. So stay tuned, follow us on social media, check out our website, and come to our park and enjoy the beautiful scenery and history.